Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna Yisrael, Solonomics 101 Lev Project. And recently we're going to have courses coming from the Soul Center, so definitely stay tuned. So basically I've had to go deep into some deep research, so you see me missing for about a week or so. That happens for me from time to time, and again, for those who've been watching, when I get quiet, you already know I'm coming with some stuff. But anyway, when I came up for air and just looking at, current events, I found this article to be very interesting, of which I'm going to read for you and share my thoughts. So I woke up this morning to someone sharing this, they shared it just today, 14 hours ago. This article from ABC News on Yahoo, titled Slave Descendants or Descendant Unites with Plantation Owner for Heartwarming Dinner 181 years after families lived there. And I'm like, okay, for those who may not know, Lev Project, we still reading, almost finished Henry Box Brown. We finally almost got Henry out the box. And so I'm very interested to hear these things. But even more than that is how people relate to this conversation today. So as you know, mainstream media are very methodical. It's not by accident or happenstance the way they phrase things, the words that they use in titles. In this title alone, I was alarmed. And you always have to ask yourself, what's your angle? Slave descendant unites with plantation owner for heartwarming dinner 181 years after families lived there. For those who don't, I'm going to stay a little bit on this. It's going to take me some time to get through this, so please bear with me. Listen to what it read again. A descendant of a slave unites with a plantation owner in today's day and time for a heartwarming. I want you to feel fuzzy and warm about this. You understand what I'm saying? I don't want you to feel alarmed. You're going to have a descendant of a slave with a current today plantation owner, who the story is going to reveal that they're distant family. And it was heartwarming. It was endearing. Or was it? So again, I read. So we already know that it was a past slave owner. And then when you go in, there's a picture of the big house. And this person who the story is about, I don't even want to butcher his name, but it looked like Nkrumah Stewart. Okay, hopefully I said that right. He's standing on the steps of the big house, which is fully functional, by the way, because as we read this article, we're going to see that this slave plantation owner, there may not be slaves there now, but he still owns it. His name is Robert Adams. So let's continue to read. It said it was a meeting 181 years in the making as Nkrumah Stewart, a slave descendant, and Robert Adams, a plantation owner, sat down with their families to enjoy a lovely dinner on the same South Carolina property where Stewart's family was once owned. I'm waiting to get to the warm and fuzzy part, so we're going to continue here. It says here, this was not about the past, quote unquote. This is the quote from Stewart, which would have been the black man. Stewart, 44, of Canton, Michigan, told ABC News of the surreal experience. This was not about, and this is quotes again, let's try to fix things that we can't ever change, end quote. This was about, my name is Nkrumah Stewart, and my name is Robert Adams. Pleasure to meet you, cousin. Let's get to know each other. That was an interesting quote that they chose to use, but I'm going to continue. The two men, one black and one white, are indeed cousins, linked by years of history that Stewart has chronicled on his blog. Now, I want to ask people something at this point. How many people, when you see links in the article, you actually go read that link in the article? They have to substantiate in journalism, good journalism anyway, or substantial. You have to substantiate what it is that you're saying oftentimes. So you have to have sources and references. How many people actually go read those references? So I'm going to stop right here. And we see that the angle is that this is warm and fuzzy. This is not about the past. Forget about that. You know, we're here today. We can't ever change it. And we should just move forward. So once you click on the link chronicled on his blog, which is highlighted in this hyperlink, let's jump over to what can't you change, what you should just get beyond, and what is really not of most importance. Let's check it out. It all starts with Bina. And by the way, it's very interesting because in Hebrew, okay, in the Hebrew language, Bina is understanding. So it's funny that when I wrote, Hakma is wisdom, Bina is understanding, and Da'at is knowledge. So Bina, it says it all starts with Bina. That was the name. It says, my family begins in America with an adolescent girl named Bina. Very understanding. You need understanding in this case. My sixth great-grandmother, an enslaved African, had her first child, a boy, at the age of 12 in 1778. His grandmother was not even a teenage pregnancy. His grandmother was an adolescent of the age of 12. Let's continue to listen what we don't really want to rehash about in this ABC article. Bina was owned by a man named Darlin Jones, who owned enslaved Africans, not to sow crops, but for the purposes of breeding. This man, Nkrumah, he did his genealogical research. We're going to listen. So we took a pause on this ABC article and the light that they're shining on it. And we just took one step off the beaten path to hear a little bit about what we're getting beyond, or in this case, he's getting beyond. Having children at 12 or 13 wasn't at all uncommon for someone owned by a breeder. Women who lived in these conditions were expected to have 4 or 5 children by the time they were 20. Let's read that again. Women who lived in these conditions, meaning on a breeding farm, were expected to have 4 or 5 children by the time they were 20. We can't change the past, but if we don't have Bina or understanding about the past, then we point at teenage pregnancies. We point at high school dropout rate. We point at little black girls and little black boys having children before they're able to sustain them. But this may or may not be in their DNA. So let's continue. Women who lived in these conditions were expected to have 4 or 5 children by the time they were 20. And they mysteriously end up on the system or become welfare recipients. And, you know, we don't know where this business comes from. Let's continue. Some more successful breeders even implemented quotas, promising to manumit, or free, an enslaved African woman after she gave birth to her 15th child. But this is the stuff, once again, that this ABC article, as well as Nkrumah Stewart, which is the black man, and Robert, which is the white man, wants us to just get beyond because they're sitting down and having this lovely dinner discussion. By 1812, Virginia was considered the Negro raising state in the Union, exporting as many as 6,000 enslaved Africans a year due to specifically in breeding. Understand, by 1812, if I'm not mistaken, it was the early 1800s, so I want to say around 1808 or 1810, it became illegal to import Africans. And so now, because it's illegal, slavery wasn't illegal, but now you can't get it from the continent. But they were still robbing people from the continent. But at this time now, it's illegal. So now you have ships in the water and it gets all muddy. But let's forget about that for right now. That's the backdrop for what's happening. So now Virginia, according to his research, has become the breeding state. It says, during the time Bina was owned by Darling Jones, she had 3 sons. At some point, Bina was sold to another man named William Goodwin. And from there, she moved to the Goodwin Cotton Plantation in the Camden district of South Carolina and worked as a field slave. So his grandmother, Bina, who came from a breeding farm, was sold to someone else. We don't know whether or not she was sold with her 3 sons or not. And now she became a field slave. It was here on the Goodwin Plantation on May 16, 1781, that Bina had her first daughter, which she named Tina, pronounced the nay. This is how they put it. I didn't say that. After her African grandmother. Tene is my fifth great-grandmother. Again, this is Nkrumah, who did the research to find out where his family came from, because he had like an anomaly in his family, which he's going to tell you in a minute, so I don't even want to spoil it. But let's continue. When William Goodwin died, his last will split Tina's family among William Goodwin's 5 children: William Jr., Uriah, Francis, Amy, and Keziah. When Tina was 15, she was bred just like her mother before her. So I'm to understand that we can't change, and apparently we can't learn from either, or understand what has happened. Although he understands it, no, he's acquired knowledge of it. I don't know him personally, but he's done the research to get the knowledge. But the way the light is shone on it, I don't really think we're getting that Bina, like his initial 5th removed grandmother that he spoke of. But let's continue. And like her mother Bina, her first child was a boy. Tina, or Tine, named him Little Frank, presumably because the child's father was Big Frank, one of the slaves that were rented out to the William Goodwins to breed with Tina. So multiple baby fathers, not knowing who your baby father is, having children, like I said, in different places, was bred into you. But today, let's sit down and eat dinner. This was customary for slave owners to stud the biggest, strongest, healthiest slaves, literally lugging them around from plantation to plantation, impregnating young enslaved African girls. Okay, this dude has 40 children. He has 30 children. He drops it and leaves it. I wonder if he was a breeder. I wonder if his father, his great-grandfather, was a breeder. I wonder if his mother was bred by a breeder. I'm sorry. This is all from the ABC article. I only clicked. I'm not reading a slave narrative right now. I'm reading an article that was released on July the 6th, 2016, but I'm going to continue. Since the children of the slave carried the condition of the mother, and again, I've said this in past videos, if we do a little research, this has to do with Elizabeth Keys, who, after she sued, and I'm not mistaken, it was in Virginia, that she sued for her freedom because her lineage was connected to European, and she sued on that basis. She won. Virginia, within their legislation, changed that the fact that if it was a European man who fathered or sired this child, he was responsible to take care of it. So once they changed that, the law, as he is quoting it right now in the books, is that now if your mother is a slave, you are a slave, no matter who your father is. And again, this opened up the door to abuse. This opened up the door to raping of slave women. This opened up the door to what he's going to talk about in a minute. It says here, since the children of a slave carried the condition of the mother, breeding was the cheapest way to acquire new slaves, without the cost of purchasing a slave from the market, which could cost as much as $21,000 today for a single slave. So comparatively, back in the day, some would say depend up to $1,000. You know, if it's a woman, $800. Depends on the age, the child. So it was hundreds of dollars. Okay. It is unclear how many children Tina, which would be the daughter of Bina, had through this breeding. But in 1813, when Tina was 30, she had her first daughter, Sarah. Sarah is my 4th great-grandmother removed. Tina named her daughter Sarah after her mistress, Sarah Goodwin, the widow of William Goodwin, at some point. I'm going to let you continue reading. I'm going to put the links because he goes on to find out what happens, and he has pictures and everything. So I'm going to jump back over for you to see that the beginnings of his story that he can remember. What does the mother? The mothers were bred, abused, exploited for their reproductive labor. This is the family lineage that he was able to trace. This is his reality. This new story says that it's a heartwarming Maybe I'm going too deep. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm bugging out. A heartwarming dinner. I'm let's continue. Let's continue. Let's continue. By the way, he ends up marrying, European ends up down the lineage breeding one of his nearest grandmothers. And now this is how it enters into the bloodstream. And he, in turn, is married to a European woman. So it says here, back to the article, because I don't want to go long. This is like a whole study right now. Back to the article, it says, today my family and I were dinner guests at Waverly Place and an old plantation founded in 1768 near Hopkins, South Carolina, where 4 generations of my grandmothers lived and worked as slaves when they were emancipated in 1865. Stewart wrote in a Facebook post, and please, when you read this article, click on the Facebook post. Apparently, this is where ABC News picked up the story, because at the time they wrote it, it was shared 400 times. And at the time I'm currently looking at it right now, it is shared 848 times. And he has 34 pictures. And this was this past weekend that he went there. It says, the reason I was there tonight was because 181 years ago, in 1835, Joel Robert Adams and my 4th grandmother, one of his slaves, Sarah Jones Adams, had a daughter. So this Joel Robert Adams laid with one of his slaves, enslaved individuals, and had a daughter named Louisa. Louisa had Octavia. Octavia had James. James had my grandfather J.D., and J.D. had my mother Linda. Quote, and now, 181 years later, after almost 2 centuries, my mother and father, my 2 sons, my wife, and myself sat down in that very house and broke bread with the descendants of those who own members of my family. The post continued, we are cousins by blood, and tonight we took the first step towards also becoming friends. So he gives the genealogy in this little Facebook post here. He says, Stewart said the response to his post has been 99% overwhelmingly positive, but there was been some anger from both sides, from small people that don't understand why I even went. He explained. So the people who are not really understanding why he went, he's saying, and I'm not saying that he shouldn't have went, but my question is towards the conversation, but is apparent by the life and the course that he took, why he has his perspective. And I'm going to expound on my thoughts in a minute, but I kind of want to continue to read the article. Okay, it says, Stewart said the response to his post has been 99% overwhelmingly positive, but there has been some anger from both sides, I guess meaning black and white, from small people that don't understand why I even wait, he explained. They see me smiling with my cousin and say, you forgot all the things that happened on that plantation. Remember, again, there's always an angle. It's supposed to be, in the reporter's estimation, warm and heartwarming. And people who don't understand, or people who are still upset, and people who are still angry, and people who are still saying, wait a minute, they're small. Let's continue. It says here, however, the 2 families now coming together as one, they are focused on collectively moving forward as friends. Robert is a descendant of people who owned my family. He didn't own anybody, said Stewart, but he still owns the house. I'm a descendant of slaves of that his family owned. I've never been a slave. This is about history. This is about family. There is nothing he can do or I can do that can change the fact that I have relatives who have died on that plantation. This was about seeing a physical space that my relatives walk regardless of the condition. Adams and his wife, Shauna, still own his family's plantation, which is now called Wavering Place Plantation. It has been passed down for generations since 1766 and is now open for educational tours as well as a bed and breakfast and wedding venue. They could not have been more thrilled to hear from Stewart and invite his entire family for dinner for the opportunity to learn about each other's past. We thoroughly enjoyed it, said Adams. Our history is a shared one, and we celebrate our family connection. There's a dark part of that history that was an unfortunate part of our nation's past. Here's how you sum up slavery. I'm sorry. Yo, son. I'm sorry, people. I'm sorry. There's a dark part of that history. It says our history is a shared one, and we celebrate our family connection. There's a dark part of that history that was an unfortunate. When somebody says that is a level of disconnection. It says our in the beginning, but then you go on to say that was an unfortunate part of our nation's past. But we don't let that keep us from moving forward and getting to know family members. We had a 3-hour conversation, and there's so much more to say, he added. That was just the tip of the iceberg. As great of an evening it was, there is so much more to unearth. Adams referred to their meeting as having a circle of life feeling to it. Everybody understands that his history occurred, and I think things are changing. He explained, people are much more interested to get to know each other than they were generations ago. For real? And I think that's a healthy thing. It's always good to get to know new family that you didn't know previously. And this is such an interesting story that it is a pretty remarkable meeting. For Stewart, putting all the pieces of family tree together came from one question he'd always asked as a small child. Why is my grandfather white? I got into genealogy because of these trips I'd take as a child, or a kid, he said. The Michigan-born and raised man said of visiting family in Hopkins, South Carolina, my family is all black. If you look at us, we're all black. But when we'd get out the car and we'd walk up to the house in South Carolina, and this white man would come out of his house and he'd say, hey, how y'all doing? And give me a big hug. It was my great-grandfather, James Henry, on Bluff Road. He says, that always stuck with me. No one else thought this was weird, he recalled. He was white, his hair, his lips, his everything. I was thinking, how does this happen? What is going on? I was always interested in knowing how this happened. Now as an adult, Stewart is cherishing the opportunity to share this all too common but rarely spoken of piece of American history with his own 2 children, Elijah 5 and Henry 3. My family will definitely be back, said Stewart. There was a lot of optimism and positivity and love in the group that night. Every time I come down here, I will be calling my cousin. He had a list of people he wanted me to meet. And this has 963 comments. Okay. I know, thank you for sticking with me. That, sometimes you got to dig deep, It's 25 minutes in. We be jumping from place to place and topic to topic, and thank you for sticking with me. That was a long read. For me, this is what I do. I need understanding. I need Bina. His grandmother's name was Bina. I need Bina today. Help me get some understanding. There's so many levels to this. And as somebody, this is a Left Project talk. So I'll stick with me. That's all I have to say. So ABC News. So many things are happening. And a lot of times, black people are not put in a good light on certain major media stations. But because of the angle and that forgiveness element and that looking beyond element and that heartwarming dinner and bridging the gap element, this was a perfect piece of propaganda in my estimation. And I'm going to tell you why I say that. Again, they did put the link to his blog, which I hopped on over to and read you a little bit about it, which you can definitely go over. Now, Roots had just come out. Underground had just come out, which created a big splash between, quote, black and white conversation of this dark part of American history. Now here's a story where we're in that lull. You just passed Independence Day where slaves were still in this country in 1776. The revolution was not fought to free the slaves. It was fought to free America from Britain. Okay, and we saw the memes and the reminders on social media that your foreparents weren't free at this time. Now, Nkrumah Stewart, who is a black man, and according to his estimation, his family was mostly black except for his grandfather. Like I said before, he marries and is pictured here in having mixed children as well as married to a European. So I'm going to deduce that that connection, even though he was curious about what may have happened to his foreparents, that real connection, that real drive to say, hey, even though I'm going to meet you or have this discussion, why are we acting like this is a Brady Bunch conversation? Am I disconnected from all that came before me? Is the question. Have you arrived now? Because there are so many people, like they said, there were so many people whose parents or father in most cases, because if it was the mother, they going for the man. There's not a lot of really until afterwards this mixing of a black man to a European woman, which we see in his case. But there was a whole lot, and as we read, and as I read on his blog, and we saw it in the underground as well, when they had these mulatto children that the slave master violated these women, our foremothers, our ancestors, they would be in the house a lot of times. They would be now the house slaves and things of this nature. But make no mistake about it, they were still enslaved. On the breeding farm conversation that he found out in his research, this teenage pregnancy issue that we have, this promiscuity that we have, this lack of connection, the man to the woman. If the man is used to go from woman to woman without any connection or drive or desire to build up a family, and the only thing he's used for is to breed. And today when we see that and we say, oh man, this is a problem, but let's get beyond that and work forward. How can we, when you're still being demonized or demonized? I'm sorry, let me calm down. First of all, let me just take a breath because I'm a bit excited. Let me calm down. How can we, in Nkrumah and Robert's estimation, this is very short-sighted in my view, because it's just picturing, it's using the nation as a macrocosm, but their story is supposed to be so heartwarming. Their story is supposed to be so healing. How can you heal when you don't really address the truth of the matter? I'm not sure what you were talking about at the table, but are we making the connection between what you found in your story's history and what still plagues the nation today? What you are still, and people who look like you are demonized for today? Anyway, I'm going to continue. So again, as we're reading these stories that are supposed to make you feel so warm and fuzzy inside, I bid you to click the links. And if you don't see a connection to the links, Google the names and try to get deeper into what the people are trying to tell you, because it is coming a time in this environment where racial conversation is at a height again. It's not the first time. And there is a level of back and forth. There is a need for those who have oppressed to absorb themselves. The dude still owns the plantation. How can you forget when you're still making money from this? This is an interesting case because him and his wife still own the plantation from 1768. You are still getting paid and marketing and exploiting the fact that this was a plantation. So not only did Stewart's family members not get compensation, Adam's family still benefits. But yet still we are supposed to feel warm and fuzzy inside because I just met you. There are places where you work right beside them. Just meeting them, what's that? Your foreparents worked in the same houses as their brothers, their sisters, and their cousins. As you read in his own blog, they were denied. So, oh, you accept me as a family member. I'm supposed to feel warm and fuzzy inside. I'm sorry, I'm in real form these days. I got to breathe it out. I got to take some Solonomics. Because some of this stuff, the propaganda, the mind control on this conversation is so deep that we are so disconnected from our heritage and who we are. We're just glad to hold on to a piece of it. Meantime, across town, they have never forgotten. And not only have they never forgotten, they're still profiting off of this system of slavery. It's not to say, yeah, let's go. It's to say, wake up. Let's stop just being excited just for a little crumb that fell off the table. And we're like, oh, yeah, we got a crumb. You know, you accepted me as your cousin and you're willing to hold hands with me on the steps. And this is not shots at Nkrumah. I don't know him, but this is, I'm only saying this because this is what we're being fed. And so I have no choice but to regurgitate it and throw it back up because it's not fit for consumption. You know, like I said, once again, take a look at this article. Let me know your thoughts. I find it interesting that they want to say 99% this is overwhelmingly positive. What is positive about this? That he met some people who were 200 years ago with denied his lineage? That you finally, again, I'll leave with this. I keep likening the system of oppression. More specifically, this oppression, which is the thought process of racism and white supremacy. I keep likening it to an abusive relationship, domestic violence relationship. And in this situation, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, when black people or black and brown people, and I use the quotation because these are all invention of names, when the oppressed has been denied, negated, and relegated to a lower position for such a long period of time, once the oppressor decides to finally acknowledge you, this is positive. And now we get to pass it off as a family reunion. We get to say small people want to look at the reality. And we get to quote that to make anyone, okay, you have to realize that in the system of oppression, when you speak against the oppression, you're small-minded. When you speak against the oppression, you are not progressive. When you speak of the oppression, you are filled with hate. Because this is the mind control. This is the switcheroo. This is the Jedi mind trick that's being played. So they are echoing the black man who has an affinity to Europeans. It's apparent because he married a European in this space and time, even though in his estimation, all of his family growing up was black. Okay, so just by being accepted by your plantation holding cousin and invited to sit in the big house at dinner, this is cause to rejoice. And this news outlet and many others who have picked up this story wants you to know that because I accept you, because up to this time I denied you, and just me saying, just like that abusive man or that abusive woman, hey, you want to go to dinner tonight? You have been so starved. You have been so much without this connection that you so desire and need. You jump to the occasion and you say, sure, I'll come. And we're supposed to rejoice. I don't know. Once again, check this out. Check out this conversation. Again, this is Amuna Yisrael in rare form these days because it's not about necessarily getting angry. You can be passionate. You can have zeal and expressing things because it's happening right before us. There's so much to extract. And if we keep missing it, if we don't dive deeper, if we don't, the news stories and the YouTube and the Facebook and the Twitter, everything goes so fast. Did you see this? Did you see that? Did you see this? No, stop. Look at a story. Go into that story so that you can get Bina. Okay? Like Nkrumah Stewart's grandmother's name was. Like it says in the Hebrew, you can get that understanding about what you are reading. So until next time, my name is Amuna Yisrael. I thank you for sticking with me through this very unexpected conversation. One. Check me out at AmunaYisrael.com, YouTube /Amuna Yisrael. Like I said, we have courses coming soon from the Soul Center on polygamy, from a worldview, and also womanhood courses and different courses that have to do with soul growth and evolution. So definitely take a look at that. Again, so many things coming. I'll put everything in the link and let me hear what you're saying, your thoughts, your opinions, and I'll talk to you soon. One.